Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. Today I want to give you another update from Germany. I want to talk about a topic that has been dominating mainstream news in the last days, the last week I think, more or less. What we are seeing right now in Germany is a planned and organized attempt by the left in Germany to swing the election in Bavaria, or at least to influence the decision by Markus Söder, the head of the CDU and our governor here in Bavaria, to choose another coalition partner, going from the somewhat conservative Free Voters, the Freie Wähler Party, to the Green Party, of course. And the left wants to achieve this by presenting compromising material from 35 years back about the current Minister for the Interior in Bavaria and the head of the Freie Wähler, so the small coalition partner of Mr. Söder's CSU, the sister party of the CDU, Angela Merkel's cock party. What you need to realize is that back then, 35 years ago, Mr. Hubert Aiwanger, that is the coalition partner of Mr. Söder, he was back then a 17-year-old high school boy. And they present now a pamphlet, a little leaflet that they speculate he might have authored. And this leaflet is written in non-PC language, and jokes were made in bad taste by today's standard. And the organized broad-in-line media is, of course, hyperventilating because this language that he used and the jokes that he made, well, they are referencing German camps in the Second World War. And that is, of course, something that you are definitely not allowed to do unless you are on the left politically in Germany. In today's presentation, I want to first give you the situation we have right now in Bavaria, roughly a month before the election in the beginning of October, and what the political decision is, how the political landscape looks like. And I then want to tell you a little bit more about this compromising material and how they really gathered that information, who is behind that. And then towards the end, as a third part, I want to give you an outlook and tell you what I think the consequence of this whole affair will be. Okay, let's look at Bavaria first. You see that the CSU, who was able in the past to rule alone without a coalition partner, they are the little sister party of the CDU. They are a little bit more traditionalist, a little bit more Christian, and a little bit more conservative as their larger sister, the CDU, that exists in all the other German federal states except for Bavaria. Now, they rule in a coalition now with the Free Voters, the Freien Wähler, and that is something like an AfD light, if I want to speak in simplistic terms, or you could say they are a little bit like the CSU without the CDU-CSU power structure and all these connections to the larger party in the back. So during the time of the Great Pestilence in Germany, Mr. Söder flirted a little bit with the Green Party because they were also in favor of all these measures and these injections. But now, since the Green Party is not so popular anymore in Germany with all their energy legislation making everything more expensive for the people, he really wants to maintain the coalition with the Free Voters, he said, up until recently at least. But now this might change. Of course, he is smart enough to leave open some kind of backdoor, some emergency exit. He made sure that he phrased these statements with an open escape route. He said, like, if I have the choice, or if I have the possibility, then I want to maintain this coalition with the Free Voters. He explicitly said he doesn't want a coalition with the Green Party, but that statement will be put to the test. It won't be the first time that Mr. Söder, just as Mr. Seehofer, the guy before him, that they would change their tune according to the situation, and they don't care what they said yesterday. This is really a trademark of the CSU in Bavaria. So he basically has three options. That is a coalition with the SPD, with the Free Voters, and with the Green Party. The SPD, that will be a close race. It will be a slim majority only, as the SPD is notoriously weak in Bavaria. But the Green Party and the Free Voters, they are real alternatives, and both would be possible. And this is exactly what the organized left in Germany, I don't think we need any global international cabals here to explain this. The left left in Germany really wants to force Söder to choose the Green Party as a junior partner in the upcoming coalition. Now you have to understand that Bavaria is the last federal state in all Germany where there is not the Social Democrats or the Green Party in power. All the other states either have a ruling coalition with either the SPD, the Green Party, or both in power. So I guess they have a list of priorities that they work through, and then they see, oh, Bavaria is the last state that doesn't have our guys in there, let's attack them. And we have seen many of these organized media hit pieces before. We saw it in Austria, where it overthrew a very popular government of the Austrian Freedom Party and the Austrian People's Party. And you see now a very similar stunt. And the timing alone, roughly a month before the election, shows you everything you need to know. They had that sitting in their desk drawer for a long time already. And by them, I mean, of course, the very leftist newspaper, die Süddeutsche Zeitung. It is called the Alpenpravda, the Pravda of the Alps. And together with some former German teacher of Mr. Aiwanger from the year 1988, no kidding, 35 years back, and by interviewing some former, very left-leaning, I suppose, classmates of his, they concocted this hit piece where they published a little pamphlet that was circulating at Aiwanger's school back then. And the gist of it is that it is a sarcastic pamphlet that informs the reader about an ongoing competition. And the competition is who is the biggest traitor in Germany. Eligible are all Germans, it says. And the first prize is that you basically go to the camps, yeah? And that you will leave the camp through the chimney. Yeah, okay. Very bad taste, maybe even by the standards of the 80s, but I still remember that time. It was a time of a very politicized youth. So if you were 16, between 16 and 25, you were highly politicized, and it was a polarized time. There were very right-wing people, very left-wing people. It was still the time of the Cold War. It was before the Soviet Union collapsed, or the Iron Curtain was opened, let's say. And I remember that there were a lot of left-wing people who said that they openly support the Soviet Union. If the communists take over, you will all go to the gulags. They said that day in, day out. But of course, we're not really complaining about double standards. We know about double standards. I just want to inform you about the situation back then and now in Germany. And we all know, of course, that none of these people who on the left who made these statements about the Soviet Union and what will happen to German families when the communists take over, all these threats. And by the way, back then there were actual operatives on the ground in West Germany who committed the most outrageous crimes against German people in West Germany with the support or at the behest of the Soviet Union or the government of the GDR, the regime in East Berlin. So the threat was maybe a little more realistic than some people, or more real than some people nowadays want to admit, now that they are ministers and state secretaries and even chancellors. So none of these people ever had to face any uncomfortable questions or any problems in their career path because of what they said as a 17-year-old and even what they did on the streets as a 30-year-old. Alright, so now we see that a left-leaning newspaper together with some communist teachers and some communist former classmates, they came up with this story now. They have this pamphlet, and they even had it checked by a professional who found out that it was written on the same mechanical typewriter than some of his homework was. So it is like a criminal investigation done by a newspaper, basically, that proved that it was written on his typewriter. Now it came out that not he wrote it, but his brother wrote it on the family's typewriter. Yeah. So he didn't even write it himself, but just his brother. And now some former classmates also came forth and said, oh, well, once on a school trip, he told a really bad joke about some exotics. And also he held his arm in an angle that is kind of, like the forbidden gesture in Germany. And they come out with all these things now. that were once again 35 years in the past, and he was a minor of 17 years old back then. Alright, so I think you get the picture. I don't have to go into more detail. This whole affair is laughable, and Mr. Aiwanger should just ignore it, and the voters should just ignore it and say, well, that was done 35 years ago and none of this is relevant in any way, so just leave us alone and let the voters decide in October, period. But I think the newspaper Süddeutsche Zeitung, they know very well that probably they can just make a little dent into the outcome in the election of the free voters. What they want to do really is to put pressure on the governor, Markus Söder, as I said in the beginning, to choose another coalition partner. And I think this is highly likely because Söder, just as Aiwanger, is, well, maybe a conservative, whatever that means, but he's not a person who loves Germany, he's not a person who is a patriot. And also Mr. Aiwanger, in certain points he agrees with our side, in other points he is fully mainstream and is really on the side of globalist interest groups. So it's kind of hit and miss with them, they're not real patriots. But what you have to bear in mind in order to understand the motivation of the left is, seen from the left, they are something like an AfD light. A Green Party voter or an SPD voter doesn't see a big difference between the CDU, the CSU, the Freie Wähler and the AfD. To them, these are all right-wing extremists. They just hide it a little better in the CDU maybe. But for a German leftist, they are all legitimate targets for their so-called activism. But we know this is not the case, and that is why I am not so concerned about this, because Söder or Aiwanger, they are not really on our side. They are just the more uncomfortable partner for the Green Party, which is the ideal party in the eyes of the globalists. The Green Party is the party that instantaneously takes over all the new talking points and all the points on the agenda because they are informed already. And they don't really have to make them do something, they automatically do it. Whereas the CSU or the Freie Wähler, well, they eventually come around, so it is just more efficient to rule through the Green Party in Germany and not to convince or force other parties first. So now it is not about changing the course of Germany, it is just about making the management in Germany more smooth and more streamlined for our globalist overlords. That is the purpose of this operation. And maybe some of the voters in Bavaria notice by the reaction of Mr. Aiwanger, I haven't talked about that yet, but it's not very well the way he's handling that, not very professional, not based at all. He actually steps in front of the microphones and says, "Oh no, I was a boy back then, and by the way, I am a good person, I like people, I am one of you, I'm a good person." Yeah, that is not the way you should react, but I already mentioned how I think you should react. But because he's not based, because he's not a real patriot, he cannot react in the correct way here. So who knows, maybe it would be better if Bavaria, just like Baden-Württemberg in the southwest, gets a centrist Green Party government. There we have CDU Green Party. In Bavaria we might get CSU Green Party. Who knows, maybe that's even better in the long run. It is not really a conservative government in Bavaria what we have. It's not a patriotic government. You also must know that the party of the free voters is basically Mr. Aiwanger. To my knowledge, there is no second guy who is that well known or popular or powerful in the party. It is a party with a lot of people on the ground in the communities, but there is no other guy like him who is really the prominent figurehead of the party Bavaria-wide. And that is why I think it is very well possible that Mr. Söder will switch to the Green Party, but as I said, not that much of a difference, I believe, overall for the people in Bavaria. And maybe some voters will realize now, as I tried to say earlier, that instead of going for an AfD light, just vote for the original, because it's not like these people who say, oh, we are a little bit like the AfD, but not really, that they would be safe from harm as we see now. No, all these secret police like intelligence operations, all these hit pieces, they target them just as well, like Mr. Maaßen, who's even a CDU member, our former head of the secret police. They're investigating against him now. He's part of a club called the Werteunion, which is something like a conservative wing of the CDU. Yeah, they're also targeted now. The Freie Wähler, they're targeted, and the CSU will be next. So just vote for the original, for the actual thing, and that is the AfD. Servus, Kameraden.